Thank you to Will and Michael, Sinclair, and Andrew and all those associated with the National Links Trust for having us today. It's great to see a lot of industry friends. Jason Black from Austin, Al Suzana back there. I know, Al Suzana, you're paying attention, even though you're way, way, way in the back. I see you. Glenn Gray and Eric Larson, Eric Anders Lang, my new friend. Dave Aznavourian, Eric Larson, Mike Wan just arrived. There he is, ladies and gentlemen. And Craig Kessler, all good friends. You know, I'm an association guy before I'm a golf guy. I've been working at associations for 25 years, and you know, I'm in DC. This is the home of associations in America, and associations are a truly American creation. If you look back at the history of what we do, and I got to tell you, and I'm on the board also of an organization called the American Society of Association Executives. The association for people who run associations. And it's headquartered here in DC now. There's an association for everything, but I got to tell you, I am the envy of my peers because I get to work in an industry like this. We deliver joy to people. Not every association represents an industry or a community that delivers joy, right? And so I'm very lucky to be in this, as well as other association executives that are here today. I do want to give a special hello to Bobby Collins. Where's Bobby? There he is, with Friends of the Muni, the booster in Charleston, South Carolina, trying to help make continual improvements to the municipal golf course there, where I've been known to hit a ball or two or three. You know, I've seen firsthand, because of the Charleston municipal renovation, what a project like that can do for a community. The pride that people have in their local muni is amazing. So good work on what you're doing there, Bobby. So you've arrived at the State of the Industry panel discussion, but we're going to try to tailor some of the discussion to the state of the industry with regard to municipal golf. But the truth is that most issues in our industry, critical issues, are really non-discriminatory and agnostic, meaning they affect municipal courses, private clubs, daily fee courses, et cetera. So, and whatever direction the winds of golf are going, they affect all of us. So we may touch on macro issues, some micro issues, muni, and maybe some other labels. But what I like about this State of the Industry panel in particular is that you have four of us here with very different jobs. Oftentimes, State of the Industry panels are only the CEOs of the respective, but we come from different vantage points, and we see the industry uniquely, which I think makes it for a very interesting conversation. So let me introduce you to our panelists. To my left here is Bob Helland. Bob has served as a Director of Congressional and Federal Affairs for the Golf Course Superintendents Association of America since August of 2015. He's a federal lobbyist, attorney, and former Senate staff member. By the way, the word lobbyist is not a dirty word, right? If it's for your cause, right? He's a friend. Helen works to strengthen GCSAA's communication with policymakers in Washington, D.C., which is a tall order. He also supports the integration of the association's lobbying efforts with the Grassroots Ambassadors Program, which links superintendents locally with their legislators or federal legislators. It's a wonderful program. He's authored numerous articles and blog posts on legal, regulatory, and legislative affairs affecting golf. To Bob's left, we have Rachel Mabee, a golfer since she can remember. The game has long been a part of her life. An accomplished junior golfer, Rachel went on to play collegiate golf for Penn State University before ultimately graduating from the University of Georgia. Rachel spent the majority of her professional career in marketing and communications before finding her niche back in the golf industry. First working for the First Tee of East Lake, and then in 2011 and 2013, the PGA Championships. Currently, as PGA Works Program Lead for PGA Reach, Rachel is responsible for the oversight and overall execution of PGA Reach's Diversity and Inclusion Program, PGA Works. We're gonna have some questions on the workforce issues happening in our industry. Her main role is to help lead the charge for PGA Works and its mission to establish a deep bench of diverse talent who are prepared to ascend to key employment positions in the game and business of golf. A very worthy mission. And to Rachel's left is Vincent Johnson. Vince is the Director of Golf for the Portland, Oregon Parks and Recreation Department, a position he's held since 2018. In his role, he oversees 5 golf facilities spanning over 800 acres of green space in Metro Portland. A Portland native and former professional golfer, which I learned about through all of this, interesting. He began work with the Parks and Rec Division in 2016 as Assistant Director of Golf. During his time with the Portland Park and Recs, he championed growing the game through promoting positive engagement for youth, women, and underrepresented communities. Having played since the age of 6, he is one of Portland's most accomplished golfers. He earned a finance degree in only 3 years while playing college for Oregon State University. And after college, Vince played professionally on the PGA Tour and Web.com Tour, winning the 2010 Long Beach Open. And by the way, I passed my PAT, so, you know, we can play. All right. All right, so to put things in a bit of context, we asked the National Golf Foundation to share with us any stats that they might have on municipal golf. And here's what they were able to share with us to share with you today. So what they, just some overall numbers, just to put the size of this into context. So the number of municipal golf facilities stands today at about 2,500 facilities, 2,900 courses at 2,500 facilities, which is about 18% of the overall supply of golf in the United States. A very strong component of the industry. But this is a very interesting slide I found. So it's no secret over the last nearly 20 years, more courses have been closing than opening, right? We know this around America, but the muni segment has grown over this time in the last 10 years. It's not because of development, it's because of acquisition of some of those daily fee courses that they saw the light and said, we want to have another gem in our Parks and Rec department or whatever it might be. So that's through acquisition, really not as much construction, although there are a lot of construction projects going on, and the architects in the room are very thankful for that, I'm sure. But there's been a net decline. I mean, it's really about a 10-to-1 ratio recently, where for every 10 courses closing, 1 is opening. But I got to put this note in here that when the media writes about golf course closings, in the past they paint it as a negative picture, as though golf, that's a sign of failure. But the truth is the land has become so valuable at those golf courses that they're selling, not because they can't succeed as a golf course, because the land becomes just too valuable. And as golf course owners and operators, they sell sometimes. So that narrative gets missed in this whole thing, that it's successful for the golf course owners and operators for sure. There were in 2021, 21 closures of municipal facilities that included 8 18-hole courses and 13 9-hole courses. I'm curious to find out what happened to those. You know, what were they redeveloped? Were they just closed and turned into parkland? I don't think a study's really been done on what's happened to closed municipal golf courses. And by state, just as an interest here, Texas has the most municipal golf courses in the country, followed closely by California. But I thought this was interesting as far as highest percentage of municipal golf courses. Well, DC is at the top with 100%. Yeah, way to go. And Utah is close behind them at 52% of golf courses in Utah are municipal facilities. I thought that was very interesting that half the golf courses in the state are munis. And now this I thought was a little surprising too, because the narrative is that municipal golf is the affordable, the cheap golf out there. But when compared to daily fee courses, which are defined as the privately owned public golf courses, essentially, it's really close as far as the fee categories that we find ourselves in, the ratio, where in the value category, which is, that's under $40, I believe. It's neck and neck with daily fee courses out there. So this is a very interesting narrative that municipal golf courses are by far the cheapest out there, when it's pretty close to daily fee courses. And then lastly, I think they put this in big font because they're proud of it. 100 million rounds were played at municipal golf courses last year, over 100 million rounds. So very active, very vibrant community in our industry. So I might add to this narrative, though, that I don't need any more slides, that the KPIs, the key performance indicators of the golf industry this year are very good. Rounds are still strong at golf courses nationwide over prior year, and we know what the story has been like through COVID. It's been very good. I will put a plug in there, though, that we don't have good data in our industry. So the golf course operators here, Vince and others, when you're asked to provide data to national rounds played or other projects, I encourage you to give data, because we don't have enough data in our industry to report back to you how we're doing on revenue, occupancy, and other kinds of key indicators. So, so I have a series of questions for our panelists. Some may sound a little familiar to you because we've been in touch, and some may not. And we have to keep things interesting, so I thought we'd have a little improv today. The theme today, though, at this symposium is equity in action. And as we all know, equity, or the absence of, cuts across everything. While our entire discussion will not revolve around equity, I wanted to at least kick it off with some questions around equity and how it affects their day jobs here. So Vince, I'm going to kick it off with you. Being the only golf course operator on stage, what are you most hopeful about when it comes to increasing equity in golf at the municipal level?
Well, I'd say it starts, even just with this occasion right here. I feel growing up playing golf. Granted, it was in much, different space. I was younger, but I think talking about the need to diversify. I mean, I just remember, growing up in golf. I mean, I think that your color wasn't really acknowledged, right? To avoid any kind of uncomfortability or something that might put someone off. So I think just the fact that the industry is, collectively seeing this as such an important thing for its success and as a need from a municipal level, to really achieve our mission. So that's one thing I think I'm pretty excited about. But then also that it does very much align with, economically, financially, what's going to succeed long term is to make this a priority with our programming, and again throughout the industry. So that's something I'm hopeful about, where that alignment, I think at times it's not this esoteric or kind of abstract thing. This really means, our success, I think on the shorter term, from a public support, really, right? And even on up into elected officials, but then also long term with that sustained growth and just a healthy golf ecosystem.
Well, what I like about that answer, Vince, and what I saw earlier from Andrew when he put the quadrant up there about some of what your stakeholders want, is that in this conversation you talk about greater good, mission, what are we trying to accomplish, and you don't hear that too much in other sectors of the industry. So it's very, it's very apropos here. So I appreciate that very much. Rachel, you are living this question every day in your job, and I know the PGA Reach includes many initiatives, but can you tell us what you are most optimistic about when it comes to impacting equity?
You did throw me a curve there.
Yeah.
Well, I want to start by answering that question by highlighting what this is all about, what equity. What I'm most optimistic about and what I hope to accomplish, and not just in a silo of the PGA of America, but across our industry, is leading with equity. I think that terminology has now come to the forefront way more than it ever has before. I think diversity was a term we threw around a lot. And I think the industry as a whole is quite frankly checking that box. But diversity and inclusion at its core cannot succeed if you don't lead with equity. We have to acknowledge, and Vincent, you mentioned it, we have to acknowledge the gaps. We have to acknowledge the differences. I have to have this industry see me as a woman of color. You have to see me for the inequities that exist. Until we see and acknowledge those inequities, then we can't really advance our diversity and inclusion efforts with true systemic value. And that's where I think I'm most optimistic about. I mean, Doc, we were just talking about it being across the industry. It's not siloed into each of our respective USGAs, PGAs, PGA Tours, LPGA. We're working as a collective whole to make systemic changes, and we can't do that without leading with equity. One of my mentors, who is a good friend of mine, taught me the analogy of, if you and I are in a room, or if Damon, you and I are in a room, and ask you what size shoe you wear, or you ask me what size shoe I wear a women's 6.5. If I give that to you, what in God's name are you going to do with a size woman's 6.5 shoe? We're not going to walk the same path. So I think, again, we have to acknowledge the equitable access, and that's across our green grass facilities, our industry as a whole, to be able to really ultimately diversify and create the systemic change that we always talk about. So I think that's what gets me a little bit more excited about where we're headed, is that we are, after hundreds of years of this, these systemic racist policies, we're acknowledging it. And that's the first step to then, leading to the equitable and systemic practices.
Excellent. We could talk about this for hours. Yeah, this is very good. Excellent. Now, Bob, I know you're nervous about a question followed up after someone just got some applause, but I know you're a lobbyist. You're not personally specifically working on equity in the game, but GCSAA is. And I know I'm putting you on the spot a little bit, but can you share how the first green program is taking a stab at bridging the gap between golf and the community? Because what I love about this is equity starts with knowledge. You just have to know what's happening, maybe what you're missing out on, or whatever it might be. And I think the first green program does a great job building that bridge.
That's right. I'm a lobbyist here, and my background focuses solely on the agency and the administration and Congress, both houses. But I know a lot about what we do at the First Green program at GCSAA, and it's really, for many kids, the first time they're out on a golf course. We serve a lot of underserved communities with the program. And it's a STEM and educational environmental outreach program that makes golf courses the learning lab. So for a lot of our superintendents, we work with the schools to bring kids out on a field trip to the golf course, to the facility they control, to try to show them how what they're learning in school can be applied there in real life. You know, I just want to note that this year alone, we've had more than 1,400 students in 18 states come out to the golf course around the country, and more to come in this fall. So it's really an opportunity for us to, like I said earlier, reach those underserved communities. We've got an event. We've had a first green event recently at the African American Golf Expo, and it's something that we're very proud of as an association.
That's good. What I really like about this is, you know, I mean, 90% of Americans don't play golf, don't orbit golf as far as the game. So like I said, knowledge and access is the key. And this brings people to the golf course, because the golf courses aren't the greatest at going out to the communities, municipal golf courses notwithstanding, but private clubs and daily fee courses and so forth. So this is a pretty fantastic program. I encourage folks in the room to look into it. Vince, I'm going to go back to you. How can municipal golf operators be entrepreneurial with the business? Let's say like building out a golf entertainment construct like Top Tracer Range or simulators or whoever it might be, when a lot of muni operators, they operate in an environment that could be called antithetical to entrepreneurship. You know, what's the key to pushing progressive ideas kind of in a stifling environment? And let me give you an example with Bobby and the Charleston Muni. They're just trying to get a restroom built on the city golf course. One restroom, and the city is fighting them. So to try to build out and convince them to say, let's put in a Top Tracer Range facility, just seems impossible. So how do you think, what's your advice on trying to be progressive in, environments that usually aren't progressive?
If I had the perfect answer, I think I could charge a lot for that. Huh?
Yeah, they paid money to be here.
Yeah, right. One, I think it's communication. Now in Portland, we have a little bit different set of city government. So we have a commission style, which is unique for a city so large. So Parks reports directly to one commissioner. And so with that, at least there's one point of context that kind of is a little bit unique for us. But I think communication really is a big thing. I think within our bureau, one thing I noticed when I came in was just golf was very much siloed, which is natural for many reasons. But for Portland, we're an enterprise fund, so we're not a part of the general fund budget. So we are supposed to be on our own. And I think generally they were fine if we were okay and covering our expenses, and golf was generally fine, not really engaging. But I think with that, some of the needs aren't known. And I think also known that it's a big boat that's, it takes a while to turn, getting as far ahead and making that awareness early enough with some of those opportunities or threats. And so that's one big thing that I think has been really key for us. So for instance, one thing that we've worked on with our asset and development division is setting up, they perform the maintenance on the buildings and also, conduct capital projects, but ultimately having more regular check-ins with our staff about the needs that we have, and having a plan that is, has golf input, has their lens on it, to where we can start making better decisions when it comes to the finite resources we have to really address our infrastructure needs.
It sounds a lot like what Bob does with the Grassroots Ambassadors Program, trying to get legislators to come out to the golf course and see what you do. It sounds like it might be important from a communication standpoint to get those elected leaders or appointed leaders that are over your budgets or have control to come out and see what you're doing.
I mean, it's all of it. It definitely. So, for instance, this year, I worked with our operator at one of our neighborhood golf course, and a group of neighborhood association folks. There's a volunteer group that manages. It's called the Rose City Bluff Volunteers, and some golf advisory committee members. And they jumped in on a steering committee and were 100% dynamite. But they helped put together a community day, and we shut down the course. Parks has free concerts. We had a concert that afternoon. It was really hot, so it would have been nice to have it a little bit better attended, but it was a really nice showing. The point being is inviting the commissioner to those kind of opportunities. Now those are are one-offs, but there are plenty of opportunity for those. And I think anytime you can highlight some of those really, unique ones, I mean, it can definitely start to alter perceptions about what goes on or what's possible at golf courses.
But I think in the golf industry, I've been in and out of the industry for 25 years. And what I've noticed that every golf course operator wants someone else to do it first, right? You don't ever want to be the first. You want to learn from others. And we got with Top Tracer Range happening here and other places, I think connecting muni operators and sharing stories of success that you can carry as from a communication standpoint. Look at how much revenue they're bringing in over here. We have 5 courses. Look at what we could do. I think that's an important thing that's bubbling up and happening in this community, which is great.
Jay, if I could just
yeah,
add,
go ahead.
I know I'm not a golf operator, but 2 things that y'all said that resonate is you said the word grassroots, and you said something about altering the perceptions. And I really feel like success at, I think at the core of, again, I'm not a golf course operator, but the core of what I do and where municipal golf is trending and going are those grassroots efforts and those grassroots organizations. Again, speaking from my own experience, I know that the PGA of America cannot come in and save the day, especially relative to equity and inclusion, because we're not a very trusted brand yet in our diverse communities. But there's also, we can't make decisions based on assumptions either if we're not listening to our community leaders, our community organizations, our counterparts. Azucena, who's in the back of the room, I mean, I need to partner with her on what we need to do to lead the efforts to change the perceptions of what people might think they know about whether what a municipal, how they operate, or what equity or what inclusive measures and initiatives are going forward. We just can't make these decisions in a vacuum any longer. And I think that's kind of parlay out to your first question to me. That's the other part of the optimism that I share, is that there's just new road to partnerships. And it sounds very sophomoric when I say it that way, but that's the true sort of measure of success, are those partnerships in those community organizations. So we're not basing anything else on assumptions anymore and our perceived and our perceptions and our, what we think is correct, versus listening to our communities, our stakeholders who are really invested in sort of our successes, especially as a municipal. I mean, that's a community resource. So we can't make these decisions in a vacuum. So I kind of liked what both of y'all said from a grassroots perspective, and then how their things are based on perceptions. I just wanted to.
No, that's great. I don't think the partnership comment is all sophomore, because I think we're barely in our sophomore year in this stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, as far as navigating our way through these matters. So I think it's spot on. So Bob, every golf course has a relationship, whether it's good or bad, and whether they know it or not, with governmental authorities who can greatly impact businesses and lives. What unique position do you think the municipal sector is in, or individual muni courses compared to, let's say, private courses and privately owned courses, to build bridges with government? And along those lines, I really want to hear about what this sector can do to tell golf's great story of environmental stewardship in that regard.
As an advocate, I often tell people, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu.
Mm-hmm.
We don't see enough activity from members, which is why we instituted our grassroots ambassadors program. And what that does is it pairs a member of Congress with a golf course superintendent in his or her district, and with the goal of inviting that member of Congress out to the course to see what goes on a day-to-day basis there, to develop a relationship with the member and his or her staff, and then to allow that relationship to work to where the ambassador serves as an asset to the member of Congress to educate him or her about what goes on and how legislation in Congress impacts them.
Mhm.
It's been a wild success. We've got to a position where we have over 300 plus ambassadors for 435 congressional districts, and also then almost every Senate seat taken as well by an ambassador. What that does is allows us to talk. But to Jay's point about the municipal and what the municipal brings to the table, well, it's access, it's affordability, and it's the ability to bring people out to the course. We see that when I talk to a few of our municipal superintendents, we see that those courses provide assets that can't be found anywhere else in the industry, whether it's the facilities or the course itself. Inviting a member out there and seeing what people are doing on a day-to-day basis is a huge plus. So I support and applaud what you folks are doing outside here and around the country to get people to come to your courses. I say keep it up. As an advocate, I can tell you it makes a difference.
Thanks, Bob. You know, one role that I just learned recently about that municipal golf courses can play in a pretty important federal issue, thanks to where's Sinclair? Sinclair and I had breakfast. There he is. We had breakfast a couple months ago, right? And I was telling you and Will and others that we have this issue still in the industry called the sin list, where the tax code still identifies golf on this list of businesses that are deemed unworthy of disaster relief or economic stimulus, you know, measures. We've been fighting this for, you know, what, 17 years now. And Sinclair brought up a great point, whether you realize it or not, is in golf is just all golf is on the list, which is a bad thing, right? And then he said, he made the point like, wait a second, you know, golf is in the government. We have 2,900 municipal golf courses. We can make the argument that, wait a second, would government be in the business of sin? Of course not. Golf is good, right? And so thank you for that. You know, I mean, this sector plays an important role, a new role in the argument that we're going to take to Washington on trying to get off the sin list. We've got almost 3,000 courses that are run by government entities. So do they deserve to be on that list? So that's really good. So I appreciate that, Sinclair, for sure. Rachel, I have a question about workforce challenges. And I know this is in your mission, but we published this last year, something called the Golf Business Pulse Report. And it was taking the metaphorical pulse of golf course owners and operators about what's happening out there. The USGA was a sponsor of the report, and workforce challenges rose to the top without question. The number one issue was finding quality staff. Number two issue was just finding any staff. Seriously, you combine those two, and it was by far the number one challenge in the golf industry. You know, knowing that we have a long way to go with best DE&I practices at that level, how does a municipal operator, or any operator for that matter, take even step number one in being equitably conscious or equitably active? Because this is very unfamiliar territory and sensitive territory for your typical golf course operator out there. So what's your advice on step one for them to take in that direction?
You really are throwing some curveballs at me.
Because I know you can hit
them. That's okay. I'm always prepared. So I think I go back to a little bit of what I said about the again, it may sound sophomoric or simplistic, the partnerships, right? But I want to go back a little bit farther, and hopefully I'm not being recorded by the PGA of America here. But so Kenny, you know, close your ears, please don't report back on me. Is that it starts with how we're describing even the profession. I don't think that when I speak, particularly when I speak to diverse audiences, and we have a collegiate championship that's dedicated to our HBCUs, MSIs, and HSIs, there is such a lack of interest in being a green grass professional because of, one, the cost to be a PJ professional, and two, the amount of time it takes to be a PJ professional. And I also put in there the salary, quite frankly, and I'm just going to be very black and white about it. The salary of going into an industry as an assistant professional is not great. So I think we're starting at a time where we need to kind of build the foundation just a little, you know, just that much better. But as far as getting the outreach out, I will always argue that there's not quality candidates out there. I mean, we just got back from an event at Thurgood Marshall, and I tell you, those students that were coming by the PGA of America booth, and we had droves of students that were the creme de la creme of HBCUs to our golf booth about opportunities. Those kids are going to rule the world in 2 years' time. I mean, they're coming for all y'all jobs. And so the quality of candidates, I will always argue with. It's where you start to find and advertise those candidates. And I'll go back to the whole partnership mentality. Golf is not, and I think this was a survey that we did with a company called Jobwell, and they serve majority underrepresented audiences, particularly in the African American, Latinx communities, and Asian American communities. And it had very sort of simple questions about, do you see golf as something cool? Or something that you might be interested in? And it was an overwhelmingly, we're saying, yes, golf sounds great. I would love to be part of golf as a career. But then the underwhelming percentage had no idea how to get into the industry. So we recognize that as such a huge area of opportunity of we're not doing our job in getting the word out, not only of the opportunities available, but those partnerships. So I go back to what Azucena is doing. You know, I want to partner with organizations like hers to be able to get the word out, because she's a trusted voice in the Latinx community. We have the First Tee that has a trusted voice predominantly in the African-American community and other underserved markets, Black Girls Golf, even our HBCUs or Thurgood Marshall that have this trusted voice that we have to come alongside with. So again, I will always argue that the quality of candidates are out there for the picking. It's just how we are advertising and how we are portraying our industry as welcoming, as that you belong here, and quite frankly, the representation that exists. I mean, I just hired a young lady on our team, and she always tells me, she's like, I would have come and approached the PGA if I would not have seen you as a Black woman at that booth. And I would have missed out on an incredible talent because of that lack of representation. So, you know, I think the advice is still, again, sounds simplistic, but I think there is a level of partnerships and those grassroots effort that will help you get to those quality candidates, because I will, till I die, will argue that the quality of candidates are out there. That's not an excuse. It's just what intentional efforts are we doing to get out to engage those candidates in our $89 billion industry now. So I guess that's.
It's a great answer. I think a lot of my members, golf course owners and operators, they come at this thinking, my doors are open to anyone. My jobs are advertised everywhere. So we'll welcome any candidate, but they don't do the intentional work to go seek out those quality candidates, especially those with diversity. So no, great. The intentionality is so important.
And we have to, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. We have to make it engaging too, you know, not to toot our own horn about what our association is doing, but you know, we do have a career exploration event that we call Beyond the Green. We have it at all of our championships. We want to bring it on the road to other events. And we took a different spin on it. We didn't want to, you know, we're engaging with high school and college students, and we didn't want to take, not that this is not a wonderful and engaging approach, but that's not going to speak to high school and student and college age students. So we really created an environment where we're making this industry fun and inviting and bringing topics that they otherwise wouldn't have thought of. I mean, things like I'll bring to example, like the whole sneaker culture. We brought in an entire segment about fashion and the sneaker culture that really speaks to our urban environments and our urban students. We brought in a DJ. I mean, again, we think about that, and I did lose years off my life planning this event at the Ryder Cup last year, because the thought of like having this like DJ on the grounds of the Ryder Cup, and you know, Kendall was part of it, and I was like, I'm going to get fired tomorrow, because there's just no way that, you know, this very traditional organization, and it just went off. I mean, that's the template now. That's the template of how we're engaging. We had so many hand raisers now that were like, oh my God, I never knew that this is golf. Like I just, you know, they're very honest and candid. They were like, I just thought it was a bunch of stuffy old white dudes on the golf course.
I mean, it's that too. It's not or.
Exactly. You know, I didn't know that I could be a fashion designer or be in media or STEAM and STEM in golf. And, you know, that's our intentional approach. And with these partnerships that we're trying to engage more audiences, because what works isn't working anymore, or what once was isn't working anymore. So we have to adapt to the times and sort of adapt to I love it. The engagement of our students.
I love it. One plug for something that NGCOA did with the PGA of America was we published about a year ago inclusion guidelines for golf course operators.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a guide. It's probably about a 20-page kind of booklet.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of a checklist to a self-audit of looking at your facility through the lens of diversity, and you know where you may be missing things. And there are blind spots everywhere. And it's kind of an exercise to identify what those blind spots are, because you got to start with knowledge. You got to start, where am I today and what improvements? So take a look at that. You can get it at the ngcoa.org site, or I'm sure the PGA of America, to download the inclusion guidelines for golf course operators. Okay, Vince, you know, municipal golf seems to live in what I would call a bipolar existence. On one hand, they can be seen as the ultimate community gem, something to be so proud of. And on the other hand, they can be seen as a waste of land and resource and potential targets for alternative use. Look no further than what was going on in California, trying to incentivize municipalities to turn their land into affordable housing. Even though the affordable housing crisis is real, you know, we didn't want that to be a solution. So as an operator, and as I'd say an inherent cheerleader for municipal golf, how does one keep golf in a perpetually positive space?
It's a really good question. So
That's my job.
I think one is just kind of taking a step back and, we have our golf industry, a lot of folks represent the golf industry here. And although I think it's been said probably numerous times, but being very insular, we're very into the weeds at time, right? We know it through and through. But taking a step back and, from a municipal perspective and from a parks and recreation perspective, we are just one offering that helps round out its portfolio for the public. And I think just remembering that from a parks perspective, they're agnostic. They're pretty agnostic about they're looking to serve the community. And we believe that we're a big part in that. But I think just understanding it from that perspective is always helpful. Not necessarily that's unknown in this room, but I think it's just a nice glimpse of not necessarily being defensive of what we are, but what we're contributing to. I think it's really important. From that, there was a question earlier, I think Tamara said it, about clubhouse culture. And one thing that I think is, as far as there's awareness and communication, there's a lot of really low hanging fruit. But one of the really under leveraged opportunities, I think, are with our member club members, of our golf courses and our core golfers. When it was, kind of said earlier, is the dissonance or the friction there, I don't know how successful we'd expect golf to be if it was just about tolerating who was showing up. And I think that there's an opportunity for them and for golf and for the, and it's something I've done, but I know that even for me, I there's a lot of opportunity there is for them to understand what the city's trying to do, what the Parks Bureau is trying to do. I think that it's been kind of at times maybe, they don't want to be involved with politics, right? Or city, but we'll be like, well, it's public space, right? And to understand that and to be a participant and an advocate, because ultimately that friction there with folks, coming in, it's one thing to have even a staff that's coached up, but I think having, some of those that are really, really influential at a facility, can be difference makers. Also, there's opportunity to show them where there is maybe a calling, right? There could be a lot of opportunity there, but I think just starting to have more of that conversation, because hoping it just works out. I don't know how well we'd expect that to go, knowing that there's kind of a built-in, like, this is the thing I've done if they've been there for years, without some narrative and dialogue, I think it would be very easy to feel territorial over that. So I think it's a really under-leveraged opportunity that we could see.
Oh, good observation. It's actually going to be a nice segue into a question I'm going to have for Bob. Let's talk a little bit about some of the existential threats to the industry. 5 years ago, I would have said the biggest threat to golf is the shrinking customer base and kind of the rising land values. The combination of that, it was just right for golf courses to close, right? And the number two would have been water and access to it. But this has shifted. The power structure and kind of generational rights to water are in a frenzy, especially out west, about what to do with the supply and demand crisis with water. So Bob, how are golf facilities, including municipal golf and maybe especially municipal golf, responding to the drought and water concerns? How do we stay on the list of businesses that continue to have access to water? And how can we be maybe a solution and not a problem? So, what advice do you have for the Vinces of the world that are running these operations to not be a victim of what's happening in the drought and water crisis?
So when I talk to my superintendents, they tell me out west and other parts of the country what they're doing to conserve water. That can include removing turf and replacing it with drought tolerant water and native plants and desert landscape, switching to year-round Bermuda grass, which requires less effort, use of wetting agents, upgrading irrigation systems and the like. I mean, we've seen a lot of success in that area. And I want to point out to that further that in the recently passed Inflation Reduction Act, there was millions of dollars to help do that, which has made its way down into states such as Arizona and others that are implementing that turf grass removal. As an association and as an industry, we're promoting what we call best management practices. It's a template for our facilities to use the nutrients, the pest management tools they're using, the water input as well, and manage it in a correct way for that area of the country they're in. We've created a template to be used nationwide. It's been implemented at the state's all 50 states by 2020. And now we're moving to have the facilities within each state implement this best management practices template. It allows us to show, among other things, that we're the good guys when it comes to water use and to fight this erroneous view that golf's out there wasting water. What our superintendents tell me over and over again is how important it is to conserve water, because like any other resource, it costs money, among other things. So you cannot simply water at will. And as a result, we're doing just that. We're conserving water. It's an argument we make over and over again. And it's something I do say as well here in Capitol Hill.
Okay, I appreciate that. I mean, the battles are real. I mean, Craig Kessler's here. I know he's helping to host some forums in California on the water crisis. Maybe some of those are being recorded. We could share that. But I mean, they like to say what happens in California blows east, but you know, climate is different everywhere. And there was a drought in the Midwest. You know, there's drought can happen just about anywhere. So we all need to be prepared for this and certainly be the good guys here. So I appreciate that, Bob. Rachel, it's another question we didn't talk about. All right. I love this.
Is any of my questions?
Oh, they're woven in here. So as an industry, when we look at the diversity stats, like as it exists today, they're not that good. But what we quickly do is pivot towards, but look at the young people that are in the game. And when you look at the young people, the stats are different. Diversity is greater, gender, color, everything is looking brighter. In fact, if you were looking at it as a stock or as a bond, the future long-term is really bright generationally. But the problem is it could take a generation for that diversity to reach leadership positions in our industry, whether it's at the local businesses or the golf organizations that are here, present here, and those that aren't, the ones that set policy can influence the game and industry. Is there any way to fast track diversity, equity, inclusion in the leadership conversation?
So I never want to use the term fast track, because if we're fast tracking DE&I, then we're not doing what I said earlier. We're not leading with equity. We're not going to make systemic changes. Again, we're fighting hundreds upon hundreds of years of systemically racist policies. It's not going to be fixed overnight. And if you fix it overnight, it's a check of a box. So if you go down that route, you are making very additive changes in your organizations versus these systemic changes. So I never want to use the word fast track. However, how we get to that new generation of leadership, and maybe you said it best about having that seat at the table, is to me some of the mentorship opportunities. Again, we have to get out of our own heads of that additive mentality. If we're bringing on a person of color, if we're bringing on a woman into a seat, but we're not nurturing that person to ascend into key positions, to make decisions that are going to affect our communities, then we are going to stay in that additive mindset and we're not going to make policy changes. However, we do have to obviously engage with our leadership that are buying into it. What you just mentioned about water, we all speak numbers. We can all speak a business case. There is a business case that we can speak till we're blue in the face, but until we actually enact it, we won't see those returns on investment, if you will. But there is a trillion, I think it's a $3.5 trillion spending power among our underrepresented audiences, including our Latinx, African-American, Asian-American audiences. That's trillions of dollars of spending power. That's also those same candidates that can help influence some of those key positions and some of those key economic decisions. So again, I don't want to ever use the term fast track, because then we're going down a pathway of just additive changes versus true systemic policy changes. But again, if we can engage our leadership in the buy-in and also nurturing and mentoring our new talent and our new talent with our underrepresented audiences and candidates, then we have a better chance of having their seats at the table. I know I can speak even through my own experience. When I was coming into the workforce, there was little to no one that looked like me, but it took nurturing and it took mentorship for me to continue to ascend in my positions. But it took that intentional nurturement to ascend into those positions. But I'm going to say it once, twice, and 3 times now. Don't ever go down a fast track mentality, because you will go down the journey of just an additive change. And it's just not, we're not going to break down those systemically racist policies in just a few years' time.
Yeah, we don't want to set people up to fail in a fast track environment. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Thank you for that, Rachel. Couple more questions before we open the floor up to Q&A. Okay. Thanks for the jazz hands, Andrew. Appreciate that. Thank you. All right. So Bob, what are some of the bigger public policy issues impacting golf to which municipal operations may not be immune? Maybe WOTUS, cover some of the federal stuff so that we're all aware, the top issues right now.
I'll talk about the biggest one, the one that's kept me in the industry, the one that brought me in the industry is the SIM list. We got blindsided in 2005 when Congress passed a relief bill for the victims of the Hurricane Katrina and Rita flooding, and specifically excluded golf from that relief. A lot of our superintendents were blindsided by this decision. And what happened is, as Jay described it, was a mentality that golf was either deserving of penalty or not worthy of benefit. We were lumped into categories such as off-track betting and massage parlors, of all things. It's a battle we fight till today. I'm a former Senate staffer, and I can tell you that a lot of these bad laws tends to get replicated when there's another natural disaster, because of what they try to do is take the shortest distance to passing a bill, and one of that ways is to take an old piece of law, dust it off, and use it again. It's something I battle on behalf of you folks in Washington all the time, which is trying to get people to understand what our impact is in the community and how we are in fact deserving of benefits. So to that end, I also work in the WOTUS area. It's water. Last week I was at a meeting with the Office of Management and Budget to talk a little bit about what our industry needs in terms of clarity from the feds when it comes to the water features on, over, or around your golf courses. Labor, another big issue for me. We talk about workforce development. I live that issue every day. Trying to get people to come out to work on the courses is difficult. I get it. It doesn't matter whether you're a muni or a private facility, you're all facing the same challenge. One of the areas I'm working about is temporary, legal, and reliable workforce coming over from overseas. Not immigrants, but folks that come here for a season under the H-2B program, stay for that time and period, and make a lot of money compared to what they make back home, and then go back home with that. What the benefits of the program are great. One of the keys to show to folks is that it's so helpful to the worker that comes here that that person, he or she, comes back each year or wants to come back each year because of the great relationship and the work that they do here in the States. Those are some of the areas that I focus on: environment and pesticide use. I want to make a point to what you folks see at the municipal level. A lot of what you see in terms of restricting, banning pesticides, banning certain inputs, glyphosate and the like, we see here in Washington too. The municipal level often is the factory or the laboratory, so to speak, where those ideas, good and bad, make their way up from there to what we do at the federal level. We're fighting an image battle right now, and I'm part of that battle here in Washington. But I'd like to say that it's working because we've made some significant strides.
I appreciate that. There are a couple of other big issues that we're dealing with federally. The FIT Act trying to allow Americans to use their health savings account on recreational activity to stay healthy instead of using the money just on medicine. And then also the business entertainment deduction. You used to be able to write off a round of golf as a business expense. 2017, that was eliminated. And we're working, NGCOA is with the U.S. Travel Association and others to try to bring that back, because is there any other way to spend an afternoon of business than on the golf course? It should be a legitimate business write-off. So a lot of issues going on in Washington that we're working on.